As Native American people, we embrace a sacred tradition of honoring those warriors who stepped forward to defend our country and our people. This tradition continues today. During the 20th century, more Native Americans served in the U.S. military on a per capita basis than any other racial or ethnic group in the country. Over 190,000 served in all branches of the nation's armed services. Years before U.S. citizenship was granted to them, more than 12,000 Native Americans volunteered and served in World War I. Who are these men and women we honor as Native American veterans? What are their stories? The National Museum of the American Indian, which opened in our nation's capital in September of 2004, seeks to provide a forum for every tribe in the United States to tell its veteran stories. The Native American Veteran Storytelling Project will blend digital technology and the healing power of Native tradition and ceremony to provide a respectful, dignified, and honoring environment for preserving veteran stories. The National Museum of the American Indian has developed a prototype for this ambitious project. In partnership with the National Advisory Committee of Native American Veterans, 3 digital stories were developed. This prototype could be replicated in tribal communities across the United States. In regional gatherings of Native veterans, participants will be given one-on-one assistance to help recall, describe, and produce their own unique story. Preserving these stories in digital format allows for all types of media, including audio, video, still photographs, graphics, song, narrative, and other images to tell the story. The first phase of the project will focus on World War II and Korean War veterans. Time is running out for many of our cherished veterans from these eras. Each passing week and month takes Native American members of this nation's greatest generation from us. This is why the project will first attempt to find and preserve the memories of veterans from these early conflicts. Phase 2 will preserve the stories from the veterans of the conflicts in Vietnam, the Persian Gulf, Iraq, and other fields of battle where the Native veterans served. Your support is needed to make this project a reality. There are thousands of memories held in the hearts and minds of Native Americans who have answered the call of duty by stepping forward to serve in battle under the flag of the United States of America. Modern technology allows us to preserve those precious stories now for generations yet to come. 3 unique Native American veteran stories have been preserved thus far. Here is one of them.
I was born at Promise, South Dakota, on the Cheyenne River Reservation of the Two Kettle Band. I have lived on the reservation all of my life, except to go to school and to the military. At my first job, a doctor encouraged the young and educated nurses to go out and see the world. Daily, we heard calls for Army nurses on the radio. We decided to volunteer for the Army Nurse Corps. We were accepted as second lieutenants on April 15, 1943. I was young at the time, and I didn't know what war was. We were stationed at Leominster, England. We were awakened at 2:30 one morning when we got our first convoy of patients from D-Day, and they kept coming after that. When it was safe enough for us to cross the English Channel, we landed at Utah Beach in Normandy, and we camped in a cow pasture at Caratan on our way to Belgium. We moved into a 1,000-bed tent hospital in Liège, Belgium, and my ward was A number 1. It was a surgical ward. We were very busy with patients coming and going all the time. As soon as they were stable, they were sent on, either back to the front lines or back to the United States. One night while I was working night duty, this nurse asked me if I would go see a Native American soldier named Eugene Rubidoux from Rosewood, South Dakota. She told me that he lost both legs above the knee. They thought he was depressed and that he might be suicidal. I went to visit him, and he was quiet. After a while, he told me about D-Day. I offered to write letters for him, but he didn't want to write home. I would take him newspapers from South Dakota and go visit him. One day he was gone, but I never forgot about him. For many years after I got back to South Dakota, I would ask about Eugene Rubidoux if I met someone from Rosebud. Nearly 40 years later, a young lady came to our hospital to conduct an in-service. The next morning, she called me and said, "My name is Ann Lafferty. Do you know Eugene Rubidoux?" I said yes. I got so emotional I couldn't talk. And then she said, "He's my father." She told me that her father lived a full and productive life and was invited many times to the VA hospital, where he served as a role model to other amputees. She gave me his phone number, and I didn't think I could call him right away, so I waited. A day later, when he answered the phone, I asked, "Do you remember the nurse who stood at your bedside in Liège, Belgium?" He said, "I'll never forget."
As a Shiwi veteran, I give acknowledgement and humble appreciation to our ancestors, spiritual beings, and traditional religious leaders for their help, guidance, and support. For all Ashiwawan Sontal Ateakuna, who have served in armed conflict since time immemorial. We look to our ancestors, spiritual beings, and traditional religious leaders to prepare us for conflict, protect us while we are far from our homelands, and to cleanse us when we return and prepare us to return to a good path ready to face life and society. Just prior to leaving for Vietnam on my 19th year, I had a very personal mystical experience that allowed me to maintain hope and overcome fear because of the knowledge that I would return home safely. Late on a moonlit night, I had just returned home from visiting, and as I stood on the front porch of my parents' home, I noticed the dog snarling insistently at something in the front yard. I saw what appeared to be a gauzy scarf of transparent material swaying softly in the breeze. As I approached, the image materialized into a small female figure. As I stood observing the figure, it faded from sight. I was fearful and anxious of what this might mean, so I informed my mom of what I had experienced. She suggested that we talk to my auntie, who was a traditional healer. My aunt listened to my description of the image and asked a few questions. She sat quietly for some time with her eyes closed. Then she said, "My son, what you have seen is a good sign. That was one of the female spirits of your ancestors, and they sometimes show themselves in times of need. She is one of your protectors. Although you will experience many hardships and danger where you are going, you will not be harmed or experience serious injury, and you will return safely home. The experiences I had in foreign lands among strange peoples and the dangers I faced in confronting the enemy were also the dangers, fears, and experiences faced by my brother and sister veterans. Throughout all of this, we were comforted in many ways by the knowledge of the presence of our protectors, the wisdom of their guidance, and the spiritual blessings that gave us strength, power, and courage. We called upon our ancestors and spiritual protectors when times were difficult. We suffered for their blessings, and we listened for their voices to lead us out of the darkness. They did not let us down. In times of difficulty, we must also remember that many others also serve as a source of support and encouragement for our modern-day warriors. The Vietnam Veterans Association of Zuni Pueblo serves as a support group and another source of strength for Ahishui soldiers going off to combat in Iraq. These Vietnam combat veterans understand what the young soldiers will face and work to support Ahishui soldiers, their parents, relatives, and extended family members in ways that enable all to find comfort, strength, and hope. The strength and guidance derived from spiritual ceremony, along with the support of caring, loving veterans, family, and community, we know that the modern-day warriors will confront the dangers of combat, overcome difficulty, and return home safely.
As a child, I remember walking barefoot. During the springtime, I could feel the coolness of the earth. During the summertime, the asphalt would be hot against my feet, and I would dance from one foot to the other, or run from shade area to shade area to let my feet cool before running off again. All the men I knew were veterans. My father, my uncle, my namesake, who was one of my father's shipmates, they were all Navy. So I found myself spending 6 months assisting advisors of the South Vietnamese military. It was 1963. My job was to run a boat delivering people and cargo up rivers, miles inland. I walked around the hills and rice paddies. There were barefoot people and their tribes going about their lives. By the time I was a teenager, I started wearing shoes, boots that wouldn't allow me to feel the earth. My shoes defined who I was and what I was to do. Farming, haying, caring for livestock. At this time, I started feeling disconnected. Arriving August 1965, Operation Starlight, back in Vietnam. We loaded troops for a landing south of July. 5-inch guns blasted the beach. Marines climbing down the debark nets into my landing craft, 120 per boat, then head toward the beach while shells whizzed over your head. Napalm hit the beach and the smell of the black smoke and the heat of the flames drifted toward you. I see their boots hit the sand, troops all over the beach then disappearing into the jungle. Rifle fire, grenades, 105s, their sounds fill the air. Then casualties are being moved back to the boat. We load them and return to the ships. As we crossed the bay, you could hear and feel the pain. What happened in those 5 days seemed to be consumed in minutes. Your life just changed and you didn't have time to notice. 300 Marines perished, 1,400 VC. Hiding the feelings, except when I drank, which became often. I was tired of living this torment. A series of despairing nights and days, I ended up with a sponsor. My sponsor was a Duane native, started me on a journey of healing which led me to a Chippewa medicine man. He prepared me for a healing ceremony, fasting, a sweat lodge, then spending 7 days questing barefoot on the mountain, feeling the earth beneath my feet, covering my feet with the earth until I felt connected again and took new roots. I had a son in the Gulf War and now a nephew in Iraq. I sent them a medicine bag with earth and down feathers from an eagle. This is to remind them of my prayers for them and to share that with their brothers. We continue to give them prayers in the sweat lodge and to encourage returning armed forces to join us in ceremony. On their own 2 feet, we invite them to join us in the gourd dance, honoring all veterans, and in the grand entry at the powwows beside my father and brothers.